When we talk about the fight against terror, you normally hear about Syria and Iraq, but fighting is still raging in Afghanistan. At least 18 people died there just this weekend in a car bomb attack. The Taliban has claimed responsibility in that case. This is a country that remains a quandary for the U.S. government. Right now, the Trump administration is contemplating sending thousands more troops to assist the ongoing war against the Taliban, al-Qaeda, and now ISIS. A new documentary, Saber Rock, sheds light on the challenges forces face on the ground there through the eyes of a man whose role was to break the ties between the Taliban and the people in its grip.
Our main goal was to drive a wedge between the Taliban and the people.
The interpreters are a linchpin to the success of the mission.
We always preferred Saber Rock over any other interpreter.
What Rock was doing was making a difference and making an impact.
So the Taliban was hunting Rock.
Joining us now, two of the producers of Saber Rock, brothers Thomas and Matthew LoCastro. Thanks, guys. So for a lot of people, what's happening in Afghanistan is out of sight, out of mind. But the bottom line is we have a lot of military men and women who are fighting there. And of course, in this Memorial Day weekend, we honor them. You make it very personal in your documentary. Tell us about this man you profile and his role.
So Saber Rock, interpreter, and he's a really interesting guy because every time somebody met him, they just fell in love. And the way it works is when you're a good interpreter, your boss tries to steal you from him. So he ended up on the front lines in the most dangerous region in Afghanistan, the Sangin district. 1,200 IEDs per square kilometer. They called it Bangin' Sangin. And he was, there on the front lines, constant positive attitude, making jokes in, extremely stressful situations. And that humor and that levity and that charisma that he had, he won over not just our troops, but the people on the ground. And it's a really inspiring story of the successes that can happen with the intervention of coalition forces.
And expand on that in terms of the importance of building these relationships with the people.
Absolutely, especially in a place like Sangin. That's where Defense Secretary Robert Gates said it was not only the most dangerous place in Afghanistan, but potentially the entire world. The challenges there are so immense, and having someone like Saber Rock, who didn't just verbatim translate for the troops, he was given objectives, and he would complete that mission to go ahead and do what coalition forces needed to bridge the gap and actually turn the tide against the Taliban.
It's the difference between a translator and an interpreter, who he can take the message, the objective, make it his own, and really communicate with people on a personal level. And it has a profound impact.
So it's so interesting. Based on what you learned, though, again, just trying to take us to this place, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the troops that are on the front lines there?
Authority, authority, authority. The issue that we kept hearing time again is that they didn't have the full authority to do what they need to. The problem is really a triad. You have the ideological insurgency, which is the Taliban. You have the criminal networks, the criminality, the corruption. And you have the drug enterprise, which fuels and gives capability to both of those. Right now, we're only attacking the ideological insurgency and not these two more virulent and capable aspects.
What was so fascinating for me was to learn about the fact that the #1 source of opiates in the world, by 96%, are coming from Afghanistan. Other than pharmaceutical companies, all the opiates are coming from Afghanistan.
That's a $4 billion export.
Oh my gosh, it's all so complicated and all combined to make it such a dangerous situation there on the ground. And obviously, this is a country that we have been involved in, the U.S., for years. A lot of people call it the longest war that America has been involved in. What do you see as the impact of sending more resources to that region? Could more troops, thousands more, make a difference?
Absolutely, without a doubt. When we withdrew, the numbers are staggering.
We went
impact.
From 830 bases down to 9. So in terms of how many people across the country you could touch and give support to the Afghan units was greatly diminished.
Because the Afghan army is going to have a steel rod up their back with confidence when we have our people there standing with them and next to them.
What's your sense of whether these military men and women feel supported by those of us here at home, by the government, by the people, and do they themselves believe in the mission? Any
It's
sense?
tough. It's really tough because, again, they don't have the authority to go after what a lot of them consider to be the bigger problems, which is the drug enterprise, which is the criminal networks. Terrorism is a layer onto the criminal networks. People think of it in a silo, but it isn't.
And people can really relate to that criminal network maybe a little bit more because It's unbelievable the impact we have with heroin in the world, and even in that region, how there's a huge AIDS epidemic in Iran through the spread of needles, and in southern Russia, also all over Europe. The flow of drugs, which is literally funding this terrorism.
But again, and this is why we love the documentary so much and why people have reacted so strongly, because it gives that case study of when things do work, of when you can have a man who can go in and have a dramatic impact on an area. I think the story of the radio, right?
Somehow, Saber-Rock they lose an encrypted radio, and they go ahead and get an entire village to line up on point and go through a flooded cornfield to find that radio before the Taliban does.
What do the people in Afghanistan want the American people to know about what's going on there?
The people of Afghanistan? We're not the Russians.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that, Saber-Rock had a hard time with. We're talking about really remote regions sometimes in Afghanistan, and their memory is from the Russians and from these
Really?
previous people. It's, we're there to help them. And when you have a charismatic person, when interpreters know that they'll get supported if they go out on a limb to help the United States and they can bring that message, it has an impact.
Well,
These special immigration visas are so important for people like Saber-Rock because these are people that have served the United States for at least a year and under grave danger. And it's only fitting that we help those who help us. And it sends a message to everyone else in Afghanistan that if they step up for us, we'll step up for them.
well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on and shedding some light for us. Really nice to meet you, and look forward to seeing the documentary. I know it just came out. Saber-Rock is what it's called. Thomas and Matthew Locastro, the two producers. Again, thanks.
Thank you so much.